They said it was over and that the hotel recording was the last word. But what happened in that courtroom left no one prepared for Chrissy. She didn't cry or deny. Instead, she faced the judge in the eye and spoke the words that were Jim didn't move or blink. He just stared at her as if he were watching a stranger put on his fiance's clothes. The room stopped breathing, and it wasn't a one-time event. I was in love with Camron dead. This wasn't a leak. This wasn't reality TV. This was a bomb, said Flesh Mama Jones. The judge lowered his pen, and Camron slumped back in the corner, arms folded, as if he already knew what she was going to say. Chrissy shoved the pen herself. There were no cameras, no script, just the unvarnished, chaotic reality of a courtroom. What followed were two more clips, a voicemail and a restricted email thread, in which Chrissy asks Mona Scott to remove the footage. The truth isn't just out yet. It's playing in 4K, trust me. What she says next will change everything you believe to be true. Go back to that courtroom, and the moment Chrissy walked forward, hands shaking, it's too late. No one expected her to answer Chrissy. The court had just asked her a simple question under oath. Miss Lampin, is there anything else you would like to disclose before we proceed with the evidence? The microphone was fixed. She cleared her throat, turned to face Jim, and said something so shocking and unfiltered that half of the crowd was terrified. It wasn't just an emotional moment. It wasn't just a mistake. I was in it. She said that her connection with Camron was complete, as if the guilt wasn't there, and that it wasn't just a hookup or a brief affair, but a full-fledged, behind-the-scenes, late-night voicemail burner phone, delete those messages sort of relationship. Devouring her no more because it had consumed everything else. Jim sat there silently, as if someone had unplugged him entirely. For a brief moment, he was Jim Jones, the legendary Dipset rider, the Harlem Kingpin, and the dedicated ride or die. The next, he was just a person in a courtroom being grilled by the woman he had built his entire company on. You could hear a pin drop, even the court clerk Camron, who was sitting 2 rows back in sunglasses, inside with his head tilted slightly as if he. Chrissy, the USB clipcam that was released last month wasn't just a sneak peek. It was a declaration of war. Perhaps he knew this time was coming, or perhaps this was the plan all along. Let's not act like this happened suddenly. At 9:13 p.m., M. Reggie, wearing a sweater, enters the Moran Hotel covertly, opens the door and drinks wine and listens to slow music while talking about drowning in someone else's life. However, what made the internet? Jim still believes I met my he so easy. Chrissy's voice was heard saying, lose its head. Fast forward to today, and we discover that Reggie wasn't even at the hotel. But the courtroom didn't burst. Instead, it stopped, and Mama Jones appeared so swiftly. Cameron's brother, his old friend, and the guy who had toasted at their engagement dinner. Chrissy just sat there on the stand, telling the world she was with him. Security had to hold both of her arms as she screamed, wild-eyed, you snake, you wrecked my son." Chrissy didn't flinch or even cry. Instead, she seemed worn out, without sadness or sorrow. Completed, she told the court that she was prepared to provide her own evidence, including screenshots and triplobs of photographs from burner phones, to confirm that what Cam had previously revealed was simply the tip of the iceberg. She referred to this as the unfinished truth, as though it were a. Jim's lawyer, who had been quiet the whole time, got up and walked toward the microphone as she prepared to give him the story, saying, "Your Honor, based on this new admission, we'd like to file an immediate motion for emotional fraud. Let's talk about abuse and brand ruin. This wasn't just a cheating problem. It was a commercial catastrophe since Jim and Chrissy's whole operation wasn't only built on love and made money via VH1 specials, spin-offs, brand collaborations, podcast appearances, clothing, wedding rumors, and sold-out interviews and tickets. Now it's all breaking apart, and the reason for this is because the basis was a lie. Insiders say it didn't begin with Reggie or Cam, but rather with Chrissy feeling excluded and wanting to seek revenge, since the woman Jim called his day, one was leaking secrets to his opponent under oath, in court on tape. Increased power inside the firm and control over the narrative. She reportedly informed producers, "I'm not here to be his accessory, I'm creating mine." At that point, Cam returned. Chrissy's relationship with Camron wasn't a one-time rebound, regardless of whether you believe it was retaliation, comfort, or just an opportunity. Court filings show that there were 8 consecutive times. That was just clip one of the 2 years that Chrissy allegedly met Cam, covertly via hotel check-ins, private flights, unregistered bookings, and that USB. Cam's legal team now thinks they have 2 additional movies, including a recorded. Cam can't know he'll use it, so please make sure the film is deleted, Chrissy asks in a voicemail to Mona Scott. Oh, and don't forget that Cam leaked, so you're undoubtedly asking where Jim is in all of this. He hasn't said nothing in public, but his silence was deafening in the courtroom. According to witnesses, his hands were trembling under the table where his lawyer placed a stress ball, and he never once looked at Chrissy throughout her whole testimony. And to be honest, how could he have done this? It's not just betrayal, it's surgical grief. Your girl's safe haven was your deadliest enemy, and the guy you had previously traveled with had the secrets she wouldn't even talk about. Home and now everyone knows, but wait. As Chrissy's testimony was coming to an end, the judge asked if anybody else had. Cameron's attorney then appeared with a brown folder and spoke 7 words that made everyone in the room stop. Again, we have more old material. Cameron's attorney didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. Those 7 words were enough to completely change the mood of the courtroom. We also have more dated footage. The judge didn't. The bay shifted as if he was escorting a bomb to the bench, and maybe he was for the folder. "Submit it to the clerk," he said softly, but you could hear the stress tighten his neck. Reached the judge's palm, and everyone realized that this wasn't just a Chrissy. Her eyes fell to the ground, her lip quivered, and her blank stare cracked slightly as though she already knew what was in that envelope. Maybe she remembered what she said. "I want this played now, no delays." The judge looked at both legal teams, unzipped the folder, and produced a USB. Jim's lawyer nodded, and Cam's lawyer did the same. Not object, but Chrissy's lawyer was whispering quickly in her ear. She just shook her head and said, "No, it's okay. Let it play." The projector was turned off, and the screen was lowered. Stillness, then static, and then Chrissy sitting with someone off camera, calm, honest, and her voice sharp. "I'm not stupid, I know Jim's loyal," in a studio trailer with her hair wrapped and makeup off. The other person responds, "It's Yan Dandy Smith, girl. You're playing with fire, you know Cam. Hates him you get caught. It's not just a simple case of loyalty. Not solving boring Cam makes me feel something. And Mona knows if this leaks, I'm out off camera." Chrissy drinks her drink and says, "Scandal, it's war." The statement goes, "I got caught once when I talked my way out, but next time I won't lie." The screen. The court becomes dark. Jim remains motionless. His lawyer seems to have had his oxygen taken out of his lungs. The judge remains mute, and Mama Jones tears. This isn't the insane, irate Mama Jones from before heartache, she muttered beneath. Chrissy just sat there with her hands folded and her expression blank, as if she had already accepted her place in this story. However, it wasn't finished because the judge turned to face her and said, "Manon, are you?" "Yes, sir," he said, "and this is from an unedited Love and HipHop trailer shot on set." "Yes," she answered, nodding once in this video. After some delay, the judge turned to VH1's attorney and said, "Why wasn't this movie shown in the original subpoena request?" Yes, they were in the room now, sweating, scribbling, and whispering into phones. The court raised an eyebrow, but the VH1 attorney stammered, "We were unaware it existed. It was filmed by an off-duty crew member and was not registered into our system." Ms. Smith and Ms. Lannon are openly discussing the potential consequences of material leaks, and they both acknowledge their existence in silence. Camron continued to observe as if it were a performance. The true kicker came when Cam's lawyer stood up. "One more thing, Your Honor," he added. This is a voicemail dated 2 weeks prior to that footage given. The executive produced Jim, who was still motionless, and Chrissy, who was still frozen in quiet resignation. "Mona, I told you that if Jim finds out that the entire season is ruined, Cam can't know either he'll use it." "I need you to manage that room footage," Chrissy said in a scared whisper as a file was played. The judge smashed the gavel order in the courtroom. It took 3 minutes to calm everyone down, and once they did, the damage was done. This was not just cheating. It was a cover-up, a production manipulation, and an effort to remove evidence during a continuing legal procedure. VH1's lawyer seemed to be seeing his career take off before his eyes. No one saw him get up, but he brushed aside his lawyer's attempts to stop him. He looked directly at Chrissy, and everyone held there. Chrissy's lips parted as he walked 3 steps forward and asked her calmly, "Was any of this real?" The question hung in the air like fog, and she blinked before looking down. Didn't say something that was quieter than a slap, and Jim nodded once before turning to face his lawyer and sitting down. His lawyer whispered something in Jim's ear, and he didn't react. Then, without warning, he took out a document and gave it to his attorney, who rose and said, "Your Honor, Mr. Jones would like to make a motion." Miss Lampkin was sued in retaliation for intentional deception, emotional distress, and brand fraud. The court was taken aback. "You're filing now," the lawyer said, but the courtroom wasn't done delivering surprises, because just as the judge was ready to depart for recess, a clerk walked in with a sealed package. From, he said, "Homeland Security, you've puzzled Homeland." The judge read it quietly before looking up and saying, "This court has been notified." Chrissy's lawyer objected, saying that Ms. Lannon is also being investigated for obstruction in connection with an ongoing charity fraud investigation related to the information presented in earlier sessions. This is beyond the purview of this case. The court was not having it. "We'll take a half-hour break, but we'll deal with this problem." Absolute mayhem. Mona Scott's crew seemed to be preparing to go. A VH1 spokesman began collecting documents as if they were about to leave. Cam just smiled as they subpoenaed themselves, since this was no longer about Jim. Rather, it was the slow-motion explosion of a whole brand, one confession at a moment. Additionally, that brown folder with additional video scribbled on it wasn't. Empty since, while the judge was standing, Cam's attorney gave him one more item. A text log from B, a burner phone that was registered to Reggie. The final line of the page said, "If the tape drops, she'll deny it, but I'm done protecting her. Let Cam have it." During break, many remained in the courtroom, pacing, whispering, and staring at Chrissy as if she were a real-life reality TV villain who had just stepped off the screen. Cam didn't blink, move, or speak when the court reopened, but Jim Jones didn't look at anyone, not even the judge, the media, or Mama Jones, who sat behind him holding a tissue as if it were the last thing she would ever do. The judge returned and set down his papers without delay, since the tension was so high that it seemed like sound could not pass. The court will now consider the last item, given the text log found from a burner phone connected to. She said, "If the clip drops, she'll deny it, but I'm done defending her." Let Cam have it. Let them all burn. He attentively scanned the page with the man named Reggie. Chrissy used me to make Jim jealous by saying that Dipset was done. She wanted to feel powerful because, for once, Cam treated her like a queen. Then came the second message, which the internet hadn't seen, and she thought it would be buried forever. Mama Jones broke down again, sobbing, "Oh my God," as a lady in the second row practically covered her mouth with both hands. I was just the cover. Additionally, Chrissy. "Manon, are you aware of these messages?" She nodded once I am. "Do you dispute their content?" She stopped, closed her eyes, and then mumbled. Still nothing. No tears, no outburst, no denial. The judge stared squarely at her. "No." Jim's attorney then spoke, saying, "Your Honor, with your permission, we would also want to introduce a document signed by Mr. Jones and Miss Lannon outlining co-ownership of." The courtroom didn't breathe because of the proposed Netflix documentary series. This pact contains exclusivity restrictions, emotional representation conditions, and brand equity terms that we now believe were violated. The court looked at the contract and found that Chrissy had broken it while filming a documentary about their eternal love. This was obviously not just emotional warfare, it was legal sabotage. And posed a single question, "Miss Lampkin, did you collaborate with Mr. Giles, Mr. Camron, on the planning and promotion of this series?" Chrissy inhaled deeply before making the declaration that turned the whole trial around. Yes, I was historic, and I knew that everything would fall apart if Jim found out. The affair with Camron started before the series was suggested, before the reunion line, we're looking at class action lawsuits. Bennett, you don't understand, this wasn't simply a program, this was contrived anguish, believe in love for the sake of camera angles, said a former VH1 editor anonymously. Chrissy complied until she was left without two. With the evening, the SARS Chrissy Confession hashtag had amassed 7 million views, and videos of her tale were all over TikTok, accompanied with heartbreaking. Cam went live the same night wearing a black hoodie with little lighting and captioned it, "I warned you she wasn't made," with glitchy music edits and phrases like, "She wanted fame, he wanted forever." After logging out, the video received 3 million views in less than an hour, and Mona Scott finally spoke up with a too censorial press statement. "I was not aware of Miss Lampins. Working behind the scenes, I'm assisting with any legal queries that come forth." But no one took her seriously since suddenly interns and producers' assistants were scuttling out of the woodwork, dumping emails with deleted portions, and pouring tea. The Netflix series has a deleted segment when Jim asks, "Chrissy point blank, do you still love me?" And she responds more than anything. Fans are now claiming that Chrissy hesitated and whispered off camera, "I hope that's enough for now," after she said that, as if she was searching for a hint that it wasn't real. To make matters worse, the show's editor acknowledges that they cut off the next line. That one comment changed everything. The romantic story that defined VH1's ride or die persona was gone, but Jim has reportedly completely stopped communicating. According to a statement released by his management, he is not conducting interviews and is instead focusing on receiving treatment and protecting what remains of his peace. As for Chrissy, there were no posts, headlines, or denials, just one. The internet wasn't having it with a melancholy Instagram post the night after the judgment that included white letters and a dark background that said, "You can love someone and still break them." Jim deserved more, and Cam took advantage of you. You let him and Cam do this. It seems that they have a distribution deal for a documentary series called The Footage They Tried to Bury in the Teaser Trailer. Chrissy's face was frozen in one instance. In the middle of the statement with the phrase, "If this, Jim is going to leave me if I get out." Cut. I found the voice of Black Cam to be the end of the trailer for the full. VH1 and the series will be released next month. Stay silent as the court didn't. Just listen to an admission the world did, and the program is now unwatched. They're seeing the results. The last question was if any. It's genuine because, ultimately, no, reality television programs may produce this kind of. No producer can save you from pain. Receipts, the story is complete. The truth is now out, and the brand is no longer there. Forever, forever,